Breaking news as far as the Australian cricket team is concerned, their standing captain in ODI, Steve Smith, has retired from one day cricket after the loss to India in the semi finals of the 2025 Champions Trophy. Well, it has come as a surprise knowing that this Australian cricket team is already lacking a lot of seniors in their ODI setup, and now Smith confirming his retirement from ODIs. One thing is for sure now that Australia will undergo a massive transition as far as the 50 over format is concerned. So, in case you have just joined us, maybe after the 45 odd seconds, Steve Smith has announced his retirement from ODI cricket after the defeat Australia suffered against India in the final four of the Champions Trophy here. Well, one thing is very interesting as far as this retirement is concerned. The Cricket Australia actually believes that Steve Smith wants to make himself available not just for Test cricket and obviously the World Test Championship final that's going to take place later in June 2025 against South Africa. It's basically about Steve Smith also getting himself ready for the LA 2028 Olympics. So it's basically going to be after a long time that cricket will return to Olympics, and so as to make sure that Steve Smith is fit and ready for that multidisciplinary tournament. He wants to be there for the two formats, Test and T20Is, and making sure that he has already achieved that glory in the ODI format. Probably that's why he has called time on his ODI career. So Steve Smith, in a press release, he said that it has been a great ride. I have loved every minute of it. There have been so many amazing times and wonderful memories. Winning two World Cups was a great highlight, along with the many fantastic teammates who shared the journey. Now is a great opportunity for people to start preparing for the 2027 ODI World Cup that's going to take place in the African conditions. So it feels like the right time to make way, and obviously Test cricket remains a priority. So if in a nutshell we talk about Steve Smith's ODI career here, he was also a part of Australia's ODI setup, the ODI World Cup team in 2011 that basically toured India, Sri Lanka for all those matches. But then Australia could not really do well as they lost to India in the quarterfinals of the tournament. And at that time, Steve Smith did not really have any clarity as to how his career is really going to progress as far as an ODI player is concerned, because at that particular point in time, Steve Smith was more of a leg break bowler who could bat a bit. And ever since 2013, he changed his game altogether. He became an all format player for Australia, Test, ODIs and T20Is. And that is where things really started to make a shift for him. The 2015 World Cup turned out to be one of the game changers for Steve Smith in his ODI career, because he played a magnificent innings in the semi-final against India that proved to be a match-winning century that also knocked India out of the competition. And even in the finals also, he played a very useful knock that made sure that Australia won the ODI World Cup again. Now in 2019, at one stage, it did not even look like that he would be a part of the ODI World Cup because of the Sandpapergate scandal that had taken place the previous year in 2018 during Australia's tour of South Africa. So after that happened, both David Warner and Steve Smith, who were obviously a part of the leadership group of Australian cricket team, had been banned for a year by Cricket Australia. But then overall what really happened was that Steve Smith and David Warner, they made a remarkable return just ahead of the ODI World Cup. Smith could not really do well, could not really put up those consistent performances throughout the multi-team tournament. But then one of his innings that really stood out was in the semi-final against England, although it came in a losing cause at Edgbaston, Birmingham. But then Steve Smith once again showed that he is a big match player. Even in the 2023 ODI World Cup, there were a couple of useful innings. And now in 2025, one of the major things that happened for Steve Smith as far as his ODI career goes is that he was made the captain of Australia, knowing that their regular skipper Pat Cummins had to be ruled out of the tournament due to an ankle injury. So there were multiple first choice Australian players who weren't even a part of the mega event. Pat Cummins, Josh Hazlewood, Mitchell Starc, Mitchell Marsh had been injured earlier. Then there was obviously Marcus Stoinis, who had retired from ODI cricket on the eve of the Champions Trophy. So it was all down to Steve Smith to make sure that he carries his troops well in the Champions Trophy, and boy oh boy, he did really well. Australia did get off to a great start under his leadership, chasing 350 odd against England. Their remaining two matches against South Africa and Afghanistan were rained off, but then at one stage against Afghanistan, it did look like that Australia would get over the line. And even against India, also at one stage when Steve Smith was really going well against the Indian spinners, Varun Chakravarti and others. At one stage, it did look like that Australia would cross 300, but then it did not really happen. Australia pretty much, suffered a collapse, and they could just manage 260 odd, and in return, India chased it down very easily. So overall, if we talk about Steve Smith's ODI career in a nutshell, two-time World Cup winner for Australia 2015 and 2023, had multiple innings that he where he really stood out as a batter, and he specifically hurt India a lot, and that's something that that's something that is not really a great memory for the Indian cricket fans. Smith also ends his ODI career with a total of 170 appearances. A bit of stats here before I take the final comments, making him Australia's 16th most capped player in 50 over format and the 12th highest run scorer. And if we talk about his averages as far as the ODI cricket is concerned, the best that he really had was against India, 53, then 61 against West Indies. And overall in Australia, he averaged 57 in ODIs, and in overseas, he averaged 35. And overall in ICC tournaments here, he scored more than 1300 runs at an average of 44. So let me just take a quick comments before I actually leave for office. I have to be in time for the pre-match show of South Africa versus New Zealand. Shreyans is saying he can't believe he is my idol. Yes, he is an idol for most of the cricket fans here. Even in India, they love him. Mohit is saying that even Rohit will announce his retirement after the Champions Trophy final win. When that remains to be seen. Venom is saying Rohit is 38, Smith only 35. Yeah. Freaking Awesome is saying, I thought he would play in 2027 ODI World Cup. It's a big surprise. Now, Australia will really have to undergo a massive transition because a lot of players in Pat Cummins, Josh Hazelwood and Mitchell Starc might also not be there for the 2027 ODI World Cup because they are also on the wrong side of their 30s here. Can be said about Hazelwood and Starc, but Cummins also keeping his workload in mind, there's also a chance that he might want to skip that one format. It's just a point of discussion here. Nothing has been said by Cricket Australia or him. Umesh is saying miss you sir Cricket Australia. Smith concentrate gamer is saying Smith his favorite player. Why Smith? Why? He cannot believe his retirement. I think freaking awesome. Just one last comment. Sitsa, if there's no CT, ODIs will lose its relevance even more. ODIs is my favorite format. It's sad to see greats of the game are retiring from ODIs first. It is surprising, and I think in a way this trend was pretty much started by a certain Kevin Peterson, if you remember. The way back in the late 2010, in early 2010, he had announced his retirement from ODI so as to prolong his career in Test and T20 cricket. And at that time also it was said that ODI cricket is more grueling, and at the very same time it's also losing a lot of its relevance. There were also plans to make it a 40 over contest per team, but then all of it is just reports, and let's see how things really progress for the 50 over format post the Champions Trophy. So that's about it. As far as the Steve Smith retirement announcement is concerned, he will no longer be a part of Australia's ODI setup. Stay tuned to Sports Today as we'll bring you all the latest updates and analysis from the sporting world. Until then, it's Siddharth Gulati saying goodbye. And don't go anywhere because we'll be live very shortly at about 2 p.m. discussing the pre-match of New Zealand versus South Africa, the second semi-final. The winner of this is going to take on India in the summit clash of the 2025 Champions Trophy. And I'm in a rush. I'll have to reach office in time. So see you. Goodbye.